Hello everyone, it's been a while since I've done a movie review on this channel, because about a month ago I was having some minor technical issues with my laptop that's finally resolved. Actually, a matter of fact, I got a new laptop. I'll show you that another time in a future video. So basically about a month ago, it kind of occurred to me that last month was the 40th anniversary when Natalie Wood accidentally drowned. And it's crazy how it's been like a decade since the case was reopened, because back in 1981, people were just thought like, okay, that was like the final evidence that she did like drown, but people did not realize that there was more to her death than we realized. How like also 3 years ago, I wrote an essay about with the case being reopened and how like Robert Wyatt was being named a person of interest at that time. And also like what was Christopher Walken doing on that both the night she died? No idea. I am not one to like prove my evidence of whether I'm like right or wrong. That's not what this video is all about today. The goal and purpose of this video is talking about Natalie Wood's film and some of my favorite films she has done, and also how like she's one of my favorite actresses. This video is going to be like a tribute and also favorite films of like Natalie Wood. I remember last year during the pandemic, there was a documentary that her daughter Natasha did about her mother. It was really, really good. I highly recommend you go check out that documentary at some point. As I said before, I'm going to mention again, Natalie Wood is one of my favorite actresses of all time. She was one of the most beautiful and talented iconic actresses back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. What made her such a great actress is that her performances in her films, she took her real life experiences, and that's what made her like a really great actress. She really was not like acting in her films. She was like really like basing her performances on her real life experiences. She's also like one of the few actresses that gone from like child star to teenage star and to adult. One of the few actresses to break her typecast. As I said before, I'm going to say again that I'm going to be talking about movies that I love and also talk about films that are like, they're good, but they're not like her best movies. They're just like worth mentioning, because I'll admit, there's still some other films I've not seen of her yet. I still haven't seen like Bob, Ted, Carol, and Alice, which I do have, but I've not got around to seeing that yet. I also did not see Brainstorm. That was like her last film she was making before she died, with Christopher Walken. Because in my opinion, some of her best films are definitely like West Side Story, Rebel Without a Cause, and Splendor in the Grass, Miracle on 34th Street. Some movies I'm going to mention on this list are going to be like some of her like not so well known films. I mean, they're good movies, I'll admit. They're no masterpieces, but they're still like just decent, solid films that are just okay and worth mentioning in this video. And I'll admit, this isn't really like a top 10. It's just like a personal list of my favorite films that she's done and films that I enjoyed watching, regardless of like from her greatest films, the best, and some of them are just like okay, average films. Also, I reviewed 3 of her films on this channel already, so I'm not gonna give like too much like into details of those in this video, of those some of the films I already talked about on this channel. I'll leave some links in the description for that. Okay, so to jumpstart this Natalie Wood films, the first one I want to talk about is Miracle on 34th Street. I'll admit, I already reviewed this last year. As I said before in that review, this is like one of my favorite Christmas films of all time. It's also one of my favorite like films that she did when she was a little girl. She plays a little cute little girl named Susan Walker who does not believe in Santa Claus. But then after when she gets the house that she wanted, that she has Santa Claus from Kris Kringle, played by Edmund Gwenn, she finally believes him in the end. It also has a great ending to this film. I'm not even going to spoil it. Go watch the movie and check it out. And if you're in the mood for any like good Christmas holiday films, this is a must-watch for everybody. This was also the movie that really like jump-started her career as an actress, because prior to this, she did like small like minor roles. This is how like she really got famous at the time as a child star actress. The next Natalie Wood film I want to talk about on this list is This Property is Condemned. I saw this movie a year ago during the pandemic. It takes place in the south of Mississippi during the Great Depression. Natalie Wood plays a southern woman named Alva Starr, a woman who has big dreams to move to New Orleans. She falls in love with Robert Redford's character, but I can't really exactly like what his job title was, exactly what he did. But all I remember was he was not liked by the townspeople because it was during the Great Depression. He was laying off the whole like townspeople from their jobs. Especially around this time period, the film takes place during the Great Depression. That was really like a bad time for the workforce for its time. Mary Bedlam, as you all know, played the little girl Scout from To Kill a Mockingbird in this film. She plays Alpha Star's younger sister. And she's like all little girls, very bratty. Character actor Charles Bronson, as you don't know from the Death Wish movies, was in this film. He plays JJ. He's in love with Alva's character, but unfortunately she does not love him back. Alva marries JJ so that way she can use him to get his money, so that way she can leave Mississippi and go to New Orleans to be with Robert Redford's character. The ending of this movie is very sad. I'm not going to spoil it. Go watch it because I don't want to spoil it for you. You got to check it out for yourself. Before I delve into the next movie of Natalie Wood, I just want to give some facts about this film. I find it crazy how, like, there's a scene in this movie where the character of Alva Starr goes skinny dipping, and yet in real life, Natalie Wood had a fear of water. It makes you wonder, how is it that she, like, managed to survive doing scenes like that, and also, like, in some of her other films where she had to, like, go inside water despite having a fear, a phobia of water. Also, that Francis Ford Coppola was, like, one of the writers or producers of this film before directing the Godfather films at the time. The next Natalie Wood film I want to talk about is Bombers B-52. This one is okay. It's a basic like love story where she falls in love with an older man. I'm not gonna lie, I haven't really seen this film in a while. It's been a while since I've seen the film. I can't really remember like how much else I want to like comment on this film. I remember that Carl Malden was like mostly like the main focus of this film. And also Efron Zembris, if you all remember, was the voice of Alfred in Batman the Animated Series, was in this film. The movie's also like one of those films where it has like Cold War themes like from back in the 50s for its time. Again, not a bad film, not really much I have to say about it other than the fact just go check it out for yourself to see how you'll like it or not. The next Natalie Wood film I want to talk about on this list is Cash McCall. Again, just like Bombers B-52, I haven't seen this film in a long time. I mean, it was good, but again, it's hard to like comment on movies that you haven't seen in a while to like talk about whether or not this is like worthy like one of her best films of all time. What I remember about this film is that Natalie Wood plays like this woman who comes from like a rich family. She meets this man in like a summertime, and then for some reason like she never saw him again. But then a year later, she runs into him, only to find out that he's really like trying to buy her like father's business because their father like wants to retire. Again, it was a good movie, but still like worth checking out. Maybe not one of her best films, but I'm just glad that I'm mentioning it for the video anyway, for the sake of it. The next Natalie Wood film I want to talk about is Majori Morningsteen. This is a film that I don't really own on DVD or Blu-ray or like any VHS tape, but luckily this film is like watched for free on YouTube. In this movie, Natalie Wood plays a Jewish girl who goes to like a summer camp, and she falls in love with Gene Kelly's character, who's like literally like old enough to be her father. It kind of makes you think about a foreshadow how like in real life being married to Robert Ryder, who was like 7 years older than Natalie Wood. The movie's based on a novel by Herman Wouk. Not a great film, but still worth like checking out just for the fun and sake of it. The next Natalie Wood film I want to talk about is Sex and a Single Girl. Now, from what I've read, around the time when this film came out back in 1964, the film was a box office bomb, did not do well at the time of its release. But I don't know why. The first time I saw this, I thought this movie was funny. I couldn't like stop laughing. I thought this movie was hilarious. I mean, I'll admit it's not a great film or a masterpiece or one of her best films, but it's still like worth watching though. I thought the film was like funny because it's about two people who are like in love and yet they're too sentimental to like admit their feelings for each other. It just shows even Natalie Wood could do a comedy if she had to, even though she was a very well-known dramatic actress though. Both Tony Curtis and Natalie Wood are funny and great in this film, and they have great chemistry together. Larry Storch, as you all remember, who played Agarn on F Troop, is in this film. He only has a brief small part as a police officer, but it's still funny and great. It's funny, like when he's trying to chase him down for driving too fast. As I mentioned before, around the time when this film came out, was released, it was not well received, and it was also not a box office hit at the time. This was also the beginning of Natalie Wood's downfall at this point in her career as an actress. She still made some good movies around this time period, but around this time it was considered like hit or miss for her around this time. So the next Natalie Wood film I want to talk about is Inside Daisy Clover. Again, just like Sex and a Single Girl, when this movie came out, this film was not a box office hit or well received by critics and audience at the time of its release. But since then, in like later years, the film has been rewatched multiple times by people, and now it's considered it has a cult following in recent years. Natalie Wood plays Daisy Clover, who lives with her mother in a trailer park during the Great Depression. She wants to make it as a singer and an actress. Daisy Clover does make it big into the top as a singer and actress. She ends up marrying Wade, played by Robert Redford, but unfortunately she ends up finding that he was a homosexual, but during the time of this movie, they obviously could not say that the character was gay. There's hints of like homosexuality in the film for the character. After finding out that Wade was a homosexual, Daisy ends up having an affair with Raymond, the studio owner. After when Daisy divorced her husband because of his homosexuality and has an affair with the owner, Raymond, but unfortunately, and also her mother dies, and after when her mother dies, we see how like Daisy Clover's like world is like falling apart. She's gone like mentally insane. I think the other thing what's crazy about like this character that she plays, it's very like as I mentioned before, relatable to her in her real life experiences. How like around the time when this film was made, when she felt very suicidal at the time for being depressed about a lot of things in her social life at the time. And again, once again, she wasn't acting; she was being like very realistic. Again, taking her real life experience and applying it to this movie to make it like realistic. All right, now at this point, I'm going to talk about like Natalie Wood's like really best films and her more critically acclaimed films, and starting with The Searchers with John Wayne. In The Searchers, John Wayne plays a cowboy whose family was murdered by Indians, and his niece survived that. But unfortunately, throughout the entire film, we don't know whether or not if like John Wayne's character is really going to kill his niece because of the fact that she was raised by the Indians, how everything was tainted, and this points out racism. Natalie Wood only has a small part in this film, and John Wayne does a great and fantastic job in this film. Also, spoiler alert, he does not kill her in the end because she's too beautiful. Okay, not really. He doesn't kill her in the end because he realizes that killing her will not bring the family back, and that was not the right thing to do. The next Natalie Wood film I want to talk about is Gypsy. What I really love about this film, this was her second musical right after West Side Story. And compared to West Side Story, where her singing was dubbed, in this she actually did her own singing. This movie also like relates and definitely points out and identifies how like in real life, Natalie Wood had a mother who pushes the limit to be a movie star. And in a way, in this film, she wasn't acting. She was like really playing a fictional version of herself. Before her character becomes a burlesque dancer, she starts out in vaudeville, which is a reference to like how like actors back in the 1920s started their careers out before they became big movie stars. In the movie, Natalie Wood's character's little sister is the big star, but then ends up leaving the business, and then eventually her character becomes a talented burlesque dancer. As I said before, this is like one of the few films where she did like her own singing. And I have to say, she wasn't too bad. Not a great singer, but she was just an okay, decent, solid singer. She had a decent, solid singing voice. The next Natalie Wood film I want to talk about is Love with a Proper Stranger with Steve McQueen. Just like the movie and like this modern day, how you're all familiar with the film Knocked Up with Katherine Heigl and Seth Rogen, Way before that film, this movie had the same kind of theme about when two strangers meet and fall in love after a one night stand. This movie was directed by Robert Mulligan, and as you all know, directed Inside Daisy Clover and To Kill a Mockingbird. In this movie, Natalie Wood plays Angie, a single Italian woman who has a one night stand with Steve McQueen's character. Natalie Wood's character Angie runs into the character Rocky a few months later after their one night stand. She's really mad and disappointed in him that he does not remember her, and only to tell him that she's pregnant with his child. Angie wants to have an abortion but does not have the money for it, and this was back in the 1960s. Abortions were considered illegal during this time period. It was also considered a crime back then to have an abortion. Rocky agrees to pay for the abortion, but unfortunately, as time goes on, when he gets to know Angie, he ends up falling in love with her and stops the abortion. Rocky also stops the abortion because he found out that the doctor was not a real doctor at all. Steve McQueen and Natalie Wood have excellent, great chemistry together in this movie. Despite the crazy one-night stand that they have, they end up falling in love with each other, and it's an example showing how even two people who just met had a one-night stand can end up falling in love with each other sometimes. It all depends, though. The next movie I want to talk about Natalie Wood's film is West Side Story. And no, I still have not seen the remake yet, but eventually I'm going to do a video where I compare the original and the remake, and also do a review on the remake possibly on its own. I already reviewed this movie a while back around the summertime. I'll leave a link in the description of that movie review of my West Side Story review. West Side Story is your basic Romeo and Juliet story, but done as a musical. And what's crazy to think that back in 1961 when this movie came out, if this movie came out today, Natalie Wood would not be playing the character Maria because Natalie Wood was not Puerto Rican. But despite that, I thought she still did a great job, and her Puerto Rican accent was very convincing. Natalie Wood's singing was dubbed by the very famous singer Marnie Dixon, who did a lot of dubbing for actresses back in the day. Despite the dubbing, the film has great music, great dance choreographs. And just like your basic tragic sad ending of Romeo and Juliet, the character Tony is killed. Unlike in the Romeo and Juliet story, both Romeo and Juliet die. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, but also one of my favorite musicals. In fact, this was actually the first Natalie Wood film I ever saw as a little kid. I don't remember exactly how old, but I just remember being a little kid watching this film with my parents and my sisters as a little kid. The next Natalie Wood film I want to talk about, this is actually one of my personal favorites of hers, and also James Dean, Rebel Without a Cause. This was the first movie of Natalie Wood where she was trying to break her typecast as a child star actress, going from child actress to a teenage actress. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I'm not going to try to go too much into it because I want to do a solo review on this film. I love the performances in this film from James Dean, Sal Minito, and Natalie Wood. They are just excellent and fantastic in this film. The first time I saw this movie was back in 2016, and it's hard to describe that when the first time I saw this, I felt this huge deep connection, despite the fact that I was 22 years old at the time, and I was way beyond my teen years and past my teen years at that point. I felt this deep connection with these characters and identified with them in different ways. These characters were misunderstood, they felt like outsiders, again, very relatable to me to some degree. Natalie Wood plays Judy, who was abused by her father. That's hinted and not even mentioned because, again, for the time period, because of the Hays Code at that time. And despite Judy's character being the very popular, beautiful teenage girl that she is in high school, but yet she does not feel like she belongs in that crowd. She doesn't feel like she belongs in that crowd because she doesn't like the way the kids act. She doesn't like the way they also treat Jim. And Judy wants to be herself and not act like the cool kids, but only act a certain way just so she can blend in. I love the scene when Judy, Jim, and Plato are at the mansion having fun. It's one of my favorite all-time scenes in film history. It makes me wish I'd go to the abandoned mansion with, The Woman I Love, and A Best Friend. When I was a teenager growing up in the late 2000s and the early 2010s at the time, around that time period, my favorite teen films were like the John Hughes films like Weird Science, Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, etc. But it wasn't until like recent years I've like changed my mind. If people like ask me what was my favorite like teen film of all time, this would be it. Rebel Without a Cause is without a doubt my favorite teen film of all time. It's also funny, as I mentioned before, I'm not even a teenager anymore, and yet this is a film that I always go back to like multiple times for like no particular reason. Because what I really love about it, unlike most like teen films you see these days, it's not a stupid dumb teen drama film. It's really like more a real serious teen drama flick. It's also a movie I'll never get tired of rewatching over and over again. And if I also want a good teen flick, this is my movie. I'll watch this movie till the day I die. Alright, the last Natalie Wood film I want to talk about is I probably think is her best like performances out of all her films, Splendor in the Grass. Again, I already reviewed this film this past summer. I'll leave a link in the description for that. I think this is her best performance out of all her performances I've ever seen in any of her films. In this movie, Natalie Wood plays Deanie, a teenage girl who experiences her first ever love with Bud, played by Warren Beatty, who was his first film at the time and unknown at the time, who would go on to become a huge movie star. Despite her love and dedication to Bud, it's so strong and powerful. Both Deanie's parents and Bud's parents forbid and make sure they do not have sex until they are married, worrying that it will ruin their lives of having a kid too young and too early, and also ruin Bud's chances of going to Yale in order to impress his father and make his father happy. As I said in my review of the Splendor in the Grass review, I was able to relate and identify with Deanie's character, understanding about how it feels to be heartbroken, depressed. When the camera pans shots at the dinner table, we see how Deanie's world is falling apart. She's having a mental breakdown. Also how Deanie's feeling very vulnerable after when Bud broke up with her. The ending to Splendor in the Grass is very sad because when we see Bud and Deanie reunite for the first time in a couple of years after when Bud broke Deanie's heart and broke up with her, Deanie sees how Bud, his father died and committed suicide after losing all of his fortunes after the 1929 stock market crash that led to the Great Depression. Also, we see how Bud is married with a child and expecting another child. He lives on a farm now. After their brief 5-minute reunion, Deanie leaves the farm with her friends, and her friend asks her, "Do you still love Bud?" And it ends with no particular answer, whether yes or no. The way you see it is as it's yes, she still loves Bud, but no, she's not in love with Bud anymore. Even though yes, Bud was her first love, but she can never go back to him after the way she was really heartbroken, destroyed from him. So that was my video on my favorite Natalie Wood films. Hope you liked it. Subscribe, hit the notification bell to get the latest updates on my YouTube channel. I'll see you next time.